Thank you very much. At this time, I want to welcome to the committee our witness, Mr. Stephen T. Mnuchin, Secretary of the Treasury. He has served in his current position since 2017. Mr. Mnuchin has testified before the committee on previous occasions, and I believe he does not need any further introduction. Without objection, your written statement will be made part of the record. Secretary Mnuchin, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to present your oral testimony. You had indicated that you would like to have a press conference in this room. Instead of having the press conference continue with those members who have been waiting here for so long. And I think what I thought I originally heard was 5:30 rather than 5:15.
My 5:30.
I do understand. We're late all the time, unfortunately. We're all pressed for time, and I do get it. However, I think I indicated early on that we would request or require that you come back at least 2 more times in the month of May. Agreeing to? I appreciate that, and I appreciate your reminding us of the length of time other secretaries have been here. This is a new way, and it's a new day, and it's a new chair, and I have the gavel at this point. If you wish to leave, you may. Mr. Secretary, I want you to know that no other secretary has ever told us the day before that they were going to limit their time in the way that you're doing. So if you want to use them as examples, you have acted differently than they have acted, and as I have said, if you wish to leave, you may. Please, gentle lady, the time belongs to the chair. Who's next? The gentlewoman from Pennsylvania, Ms. Dean, is recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Secretary Mnuchin, Chairman Neal requested the President's tax returns last week. Section 6103 of the Internal Revenue Code states that when the Committee on Ways and Means makes such a request, quote, the Secretary shall furnish any return or return information specified in such requests. You are being asked to comply with the law today, and I can imagine you may feel your job as Secretary is on the line. Yesterday, President Trump forcibly ousted Secretary Nielsen, adding to a long list of cabinet-level officials that he forced out, including Chief of Staff John Kelly, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Secretary Mnuchin, will you comply with the law by the deadline tomorrow and furnish the tax returns? Even what you are basically saying, you follow the law, and you're not afraid that you will be fired if, in fact, you release the returns. Secretary Mnuchin, since President Trump took office, numerous press reports have alleged that Trump associates and campaign officials attempted to negotiate the lifting of U.S. sanctions against Russia. And now I understand that when you lifted sanctions against Rusal, a major aluminum company largely owned by Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, you also directly benefited one of your former business associates and close friends, Leonid Blavatnik, with whom you owned Rat Pack Dune Entertainment, or RPDE. It also seems that Mr. Blavatnik was a close relationship. I have in my possession a series of letters the Treasury exchanged with Congresswoman Jackie Spear that pertain to this issue. Treasury's response to Ms. Spear denies media reports that you sold your ownership in RPDE to Mr. Blavatnik, stating that you sold your share to a third party, unconnected to Mr. Blavatnik. However, the letter does not comment on Mr. Blavatnik's company purchasing an interest in a related company, Rat Pack Entertainment, at the exact same time. Who is the third party that you sold your shares to? Was and is in no way related to Rat Pack Entertainment, is that correct? So there is a connection between Rat Pack Dune and Rat Pack Entertainment. But so when we ask about whether or not the third party was involved with Rat Pack Entertainment at the same time, so one had nothing to do with never met or talked with or had any conversations with Mr. Deripaska or with for Mr. Victor Vexelberg or anybody about sanctions. Is that correct? And you've never been involved with any oligarchs in terms of your previous business. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. And so I'm going to have the record record that the third party that you sold your shares to, you refused to reveal to this committee. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, let us continue. The gentleman from North Carolina, Ranking Member Mr. McHenry, is recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Heck, for yielding this time to me. As you know, as a ranking member, but as I have sat here, recognizing the size of Wells Fargo, 1.9 trillion in assets, with over 6,200 bank branches, 268,000 employees. It's really striking me how huge this bank is. I'm chairman and CEO about whether or not really know what is going on at the bank. I am concerned about the length of time it took you to know what's going on, and I'm concerned that maybe you don't have a handle on your management and what the reporting process is that would make you aware of what's going on. You praised Ms. Tolstad for her management of the division, even though she had fired 1,000 employees for this fraud in 2011, and yet supposedly it took you 2 years to know about what had happened. She didn't tell you. She withheld the information, and you indicated in her glowing retirement that she had done a great job. I'm really concerned about whether or not, in fact, you understand that we have been sitting here fighting to implement Dodd-Frank and trying to work out, some of the problems that have been identified with Dodd-Frank. But you're on the board of directors of the Financial Services Roundtable. It's an advocacy group for the banking industry that has worked to defund the CFPB, hobble its structure, and remove its ability to curb abusive practices. Now, I want to know perhaps what you think now that Wells Fargo has been caught by the CFPB for all of this fraud. And I wonder if you denounce the Financial Services Roundtable's we've been sitting here. I have learned that maybe not only is Wells Fargo too huge to manage, but maybe the reason you don't know some of the detail is because you also sit on a number of big boards. You're sitting on the board of Chevron for $375,000 in total compensation per year, and you're on the board of Target Corporation for $272,000 in total compensation per year. You have a responsibility to them. You have a fiduciary responsibility. And in addition to that, during this hearing, Bloomberg sent out an alert that you will be facing a $20 million penalty for improperly repossessing cars from members of the military. It appears that the company just can't make it through even this congressional hearing without us learning more and more information about what is going on at Wells Fargo. I appreciate your apology. I appreciate the clawback and all of that. But Mr. Chairman and members who are left, I have come to the conclusion. I served on the conference committee for Dodd-Frank. We talked a lot about the living wills and how to learn more about how these banks are put together and how they operate. And of course, the 5 largest banks in this country have failed the living wills test, including Wells Fargo. And so I'm looking at living wills and the inability to pass the test. I'm looking at stress testing. I'm looking at size. I'm looking at this particular fraud that has gone on. And I'm worried for the whole banking community that the public cannot and will not continue to trust our banks. who we need in this economy in order to do the business to make the economy work and run. But they're looking at us, and they're saying, for all of you, particularly those of you who serve on the Financial Services Committee, you're letting us down. You're not protecting us. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be talking with you and the members of this committee who showed their outrage here today. I'm moving forward to break up Wells Fargo Bank. Thank you very much. Mr. Stump, you have said repeatedly that you were not aware of this widespread fraud in your bank until late in 2013. And it appears that there were activities going on that indicates you may have known much earlier than that. For example, in 2007, just months after you became CEO, the sales quality manual for the community banking division was updated with your executive guidance. As the manual states, that sales guide reminded employees of what should have been obvious, that they needed to obtain a customer's consent before opening an account. And so, am I to understand that you discovered that there was something going on and there was a need for you to do this? That manual also said that sales practices that showed, quote, questionable activity, unquote, would be sent via high priority to bank executives. So it appears that you knew something in 2007 that unauthorized accounts were a big enough problem that you had to correct your employee manual. And as early as 2008, I have documents from court filings showing your employees were contacting your ethics hotline, reporting bank fraud, and complaining to managers over unauthorized accounts in 2008. What's more, I have here a consent order with the Fed from 2011 that puts your company on watch for sales quotas and compensation schemes that pushed employees to break the law. Does this sound familiar? Let me just point out some other activities that should sound familiar to you. While you were under the consent order for the mortgage arm of Wells Fargo, this fraud was surging in the retail arm of Wells Fargo, but you didn't connect the dots on these high-level trends across the bank. Do you or didn't you know in 2011 that perhaps your sales incentives were driving this fraud? Assume that you change your customer agreement to add forced arbitration clauses for checking accounts, and that these clauses prove to be incredibly helpful when you use them to dismiss multiple customer lawsuits. Is that true? All right, thank you very much. My time is up, and I'll get to this later on. I'd like to continue my conversation, my discussions with you on best interest, the client, the customer's best interest always being put first. I think we need to continue that conversation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome back, Chairman Clayton. Mr. Chairman, given recent developments regarding the Boca Rule, I'd like to offer a reminder that Congress put the Boca Rule into effect in order to stop banks from essentially gambling with taxpayer dollars. But earlier this year, the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, the Federal Reserve Board, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and the Securities and Exchange Commission issued a proposal that appears to give banks a pass and allow them to continue what Congress clearly wanted to stop. Now, the SEC's analysis of the proposed rules said, and I quote, "We recognize that the proposed amendment would increase moral hazard risk related to proprietary trading by allowing dealers to take positions that are economically equivalent to positions they could have taken in the absence of the 2013 final rule," end quote. I'm also concerned about the SEC's regulation-based interest. In Dodd-Frank, Congress specifically gave the SEC the authority to impose a harmonized fiduciary standard for both brokers and investment advisors. But the SEC's proposal does not do that. So, Mr. Chairman, it has been reported that you have a plan to advance a package of capital markets bills to the House floor. You and I have not talked about this, have not been consulted on what might be included in such a package. But based on some of the bills the committee has marked up to date, I remain concerned that this package may contain bills that could weaken investor protections, given that any such legislation could make the SEC's job that I look forward to hearing from him throughout this process. So I thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.